Like, you really should just be investing in the experiences and your people and yourself and like maximizing the life now versus just saving everything for tomorrow. All right, what is up, everybody? Episode 28 of Pursuit of Balance. We're going to talk about, I think this title is going to be Die with Zero, or What the Hell Are We Saving For? And this was kind of a subject that was brought up last week we do like an annual kickoff meeting with the team every year. We do weekly team meetings, but like a 2-hour one. And, generally it's obviously kind of like reflection on going over numbers for, the year and like how we did compared to the previous year. And then we'll start talking about a little bit of like action items and company goals and things that we want to really improve on and work on. And then I do this fun drill. Well, I find fun. I hope everyone finds fun. But basically just kind of like I'll ask the team and we'll kind of go round robin, right? So we basically all have pen and paper. And I'll ask like a couple reflection items of like most proud of in 25, biggest lesson learned in 25, then a couple current status things of like what fills your cup the most in the current moment, what's driving you the most right now as far as needs go or wants. And then I ask like a couple future tense questions, which are, what's your goal professionally for 26 or just moving forward in general, maybe outside of a year. And then on a personal level, it's also your goal moving forward. And I like to do this with the team because like we'll all write it down. We'll all share our answers. I was just telling Chaz and Elliot, like, I think for me, it's like, writing things down, I think is a big thing and important for a lot of us when it comes to that. But I also think like the public accountability side of it, of like, just like saying these things out loud and borderline manifesting it and holding yourself accountable with other peers, hearing it as well was always a big thing. But like one of the subjects that we talked about, was like one of the things like from a company goal that I'm really trying to like work on providing more of is, I never really in the beginning of the business or even just the beginning of my career thought about like the need for caring about medical insurance or 401k. I never worked at big corporate where we had like profit sharing or a PTO. Like my job in my industry was always like, I am trading my time for dollars. And I get paid when I work and I don't get paid when I don't, right? And, I want to be able to provide more of like a career for people. So that was just like a big personal goal, personal/company goal that I wanted to work on. So like one of the drills that I did was like, okay, I was like, we're going to write all these things down, like your hourly rate or income, whatever that might be, 401k matching, medical insurance, PTO, profit sharing, educate, like we do an education stipend right now for tier 3, 4, and 5 coaches. We do like retention bonuses. So like little incentive-based bonuses. And we kind of just like ranked them all out, right? And like the things that obviously we have, like number one, obviously income, but like, the bonuses, incentive-based bonuses, and education stipend. And for me, kind of my philosophy in the beginning was, like, I want to, like, for me, education's always been such an important thing for me personally. Like, when I invest in myself on a course, a workshop, a book, any level of education, a mentorship, I think it kind of changes my mindset with work a little bit because, like, it allows me to stay creative because I'm excited about what I'm learning and what I get to apply from it. And I think it just kind of keeps me on top of my game as far as, like, what I do is, with work instead of just becoming complacent. So that was always like my philosophy around it. And then like, I think the incentive-based bonuses is for me, it's like, I've always really performed well in performance-based culture. Like, it's just like for me, like I've always been a very competitive person by nature. And I like to be rewarded if I'm a high output, team member or client or whatever that might be. So that was kind of like how I built it in the beginning. And now it's like over, and it was funny when I did it with Mountain View, like the thing that made it to number 1 ranking, like tied obviously income for both people or both locations, but like medical was more important for Mountain View and like 401k matching was more important for Palo Alto. And Harvey said this with Palo Alto. He was like, yeah, it's just because we're older, we're more mature than Mountain View. So it's like, but no matter what, I think like, we have these different needs in life, right? Which is going to be an episode that I will talk on next week. Like human needs and how they drive us. But long story short, there's this book that I read called Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. And I read this probably about 6 months ago, maybe. And I've loved the philosophy because I think it's like a philosophy that I've lived by. And I really just like, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to share this on an episode because I think this would be kind of like a cool subject for a lot of people to hear, right? Is because when you think about this idea of retirement, right? You think about this idea of saving for tomorrow. It is something I think every human should be doing, right? Like, I think there's this balancing act in life where it's like, we're looking to do our best to stay as present as possible because like presence is where happiness lives, right? Like you are going to be happy and fulfilled with your life when the more times than not that you can remain present. But that being said, I think it's important for us to, learn from the past and history. Like, and this is why, like, even for me, like on education, even like finances, like I'm reading a book called Intelligent Investor right now. And it's like, I mean, I think it was written in the 60s. So a lot of it is like older adage, but I think it's important because like when you look at history and you understand that there is cycles and there's patterns to life, like we can learn from it. But the dangerous side about history in the past is a lot of people can get sometimes stuck there. And that's what kind of I've always said is like where depression lives. Like depression is something that lives in the past because we can't grow from it. But then you look at the other side and it's this concept that like we are saving for the future, we're planning for tomorrow, we're putting eggs away now so this way we can kind of afford to live later. And obviously, once again, it's something that I think every human should be doing is like you need to be able to plan for tomorrow. Like, like if it's just like fuck tomorrow, live for today and like only being omnipresent, and that's where I think like there's always, once again, a pursuit of balance behind everything that we do. Like there needs to be this balancing act, right? So die with zero, basically, if I kind of had the 10 things that I wrote down. Like I would say like the core things that really popped out on the book for me. And I think for his philosophy just overall was like, if you think about how you're living now, right? So let's say you're in the decades of your 20s or you're in the decade of your 30s or your 40s or your 50s, right? Like, so let's just basically say like 20 to 60 kind of being like our big working years, right? And then, some of us are still working from the 60 to 65, 60, 70, whatever it might be. And I would say a majority of us probably hopefully by 70 are no longer working or retired in some degree. And then prior to 20, maybe you are working some part-time job at school, things like that. So you think about this, it's like, okay, 20 to 60, right? It's like that big 40-year chunk of our life, right? Not the 0 to 20, not the 60 on, is kind of like our peak working years, right? But I also think about this, I've watched a lot of podcasts with like this guy, I think his name's Scott Galloway. And it's funny because my wife was saying, he's like, he kind of speaks on your philosophy. And he talks about like, how he thinks remote work is so bad for this generation because, it's like, hey, for example, 1/3 of every relationship that's made comes from a workplace, right? He's like, I know no HR person's going to want to hear that, but like, I met my wife at work, so I think like the idea of this social interaction, he goes, and another thing, which I, disagree with is like how strongly people are just like going into sobriety. Not that like not drinking is not healthy, but like, I think the not drinking is removing people from this communal attachment and the social kind of thing that connects people. And that's always kind of been my philosophy with the drinking too. It's like, I don't argue that drinking is bad for people, right? I argue that going completely sober and removing yourself from the social element, that I think is bad for people, right? Because that is one of those, and like, whatever, if like it takes a drink to get somebody to have some confidence to go out or go meet somebody or go introduce yourself or go hang out with friends instead of just staying at home and doom scrolling or watching TV or just, trapping yourself in a house, that for me, I think is a net positive. So from a financial perspective though, and it's interesting because Bill Perkins like has made, a lot of money for himself and is like very financially well off. But I love his philosophy that he's like, why would you save as much as possible during the time that you're going to want to maximize life experience, more of the life maxing side of it, to then save for an age that you're not going to need it, or you're not going to have the physical well-being or maybe the mental or emotional energy to do some of these things. He's just like, you really should just be investing in the experiences and your people and yourself and like maximizing the life now versus just saving everything for tomorrow, right? And like I said, I want there to be context with this statement because I think like a lot of this book, even though I agree with probably 80-90% of it, I do think that there's an element of like, I'm not saying don't save for tomorrow. I'm not saying don't think about the future. I'm saying prioritize more of your resources, energy, time, and money into the current moment, right? So I'm going to just start with the top, right? So like number one, he put the purpose of money is to maximize life experiences, not to die with a high net worth, right? Like money is a tool. If it never gets used, it's failed its purpose, right? I don't know who I was talking to yesterday, but I was just saying like, sometimes I think about that. Like, what the fuck's money for? Like, if I'm just saving it all the time or I'm putting it away or I'm putting it away for certain things, it's like, and I grew up, and sorry, mom and dad, my parents were, as my mom would say, she's frugal, or my parents are very smart with their money, right? But they were always very defensive with their money, meaning like, they did very well for themselves, built everything from the ground for themselves, and have a great life. But they put a lot away for the future and kind of saving for the future. And I've always said like they financially think defensively, meaning like saving was their way to their wealth, on top of earning. And for me, like growing up around that, I was like kind of, became the opposite. My mom always says this. She goes, I just wish I could spend money like you. Like you just don't care sometimes. It doesn't matter if it's like going out to a restaurant or if it's going on a vacation. And I will say that I think there's different needs that need to be fulfilled for people in the aspect of what finances can be used for. Like for me, when it comes to like clothing, like I really don't care. Like I don't need designer stuff. I don't need new clothes all the time. Like there was this small period in my life in my 20s where I was like, you're single and you're going out in the weekend. It was always fun to get a new outfit. But like honestly, like it's not something that I really think for me is a big demand. Now it's like I love obviously when I go on vacations, not really thinking about things as far as money, drinking, events that we're doing, experiences. For me, it was like cars. I love cars. I love my toys. So there's certain things where I just like I really don't care. It's just like, it's like I'd rather just like spend the money and like enjoy what I have while I have it. And I think about this a lot with my hobbies, right? It's like when I think about like, oh, going snowboarding or surfing or some of these more physically demanding things, like already at 34 years old, it's different than how it was when I was in my early 20s. Like when I was in my early 20s, I can beat my body up and I can do these things at a much higher volume and frequency and my body can handle it. Now it's like with career and like time and just the physical capacity, I still do it. I still love it, but it's already dropped, right? Like I'm already losing some of like the high end potential of like when you think about athletes, right? Like when you think about someone being, if they're a 34-year-old person in like the NFL, like they're considered freaking geriatric, right? Like they're old by definition. So like you have these different peaks in life, right? And I think that's kind of where a lot of this is going to tie in as I keep going. Number two, experiences have expiration dates, which is obviously what I was just talking about. Like what you can do at 30, you probably won't be able to do at 60, right? So some of these more physically demanding events, right? So this could be travel, this could be going on vacation, this could be doing the things that I was just talking about. They do have expiration dates. Like there is times and places that you're going to be able to utilize them. Number three, health and energy declines faster than the income needs. Most people need less money in life, not more, right? So what we're saying by that is like, I think about that when I look at my parents or my in-laws or my grandparents. It's like their lifestyle. Like my parents, it's like they like to go out to restaurants and eat. They like to golf 2-3 times a week. But other than that, like they ain't never buying clothes. They rarely buy a new car, even though they should. Like their need to spend money or do things or just even experiences is like dropped a lot, right? And obviously now having all the kids out of the house, so it's like it's an interesting thing. It's like when you think you're like the most amount of money I would imagine that someone would spend would probably be between like the 30 to 50 range, right? Like when you're having kids and you're needing to, afford, maybe you're buying a new house and maybe you're trying to obviously support a wife or a husband, or you're supporting your kids through school and, all the other things that they're doing, sports and events that cost money. Like that's where I would say like that's probably going to be one of the most expensive times of years to live, right? Number four, memories are assets that compound over time and experience pays dividends. He calls this like the social dividend. And I love this, right? Because like what he means by that is like an experience that you go, right? So, I heard this quote a long time ago that was like when people ask me like, what's my favorite memory? It's generally always a memory either with like my wife, my family, or my friends, and it's like on a vacation. So I always realized that when I was telling people that if the most memorable time of my life always involved being around the people I loved, going somewhere and doing something fun, why would I not try to maximize more of that? Right? Like not like work will always be here, like all the things that I think still need to be done. It's not saying like we're not doing that in order to do so. It's just like how much allocation of these things am I doing? But the experience, like the social dividend thing he's talking about is like when you go book a vacation or an event or something, you get the fun of thinking about it, the excitement. Like, for example, I'm going to Cabo for the first time in April for my brother-in-law's 40th. And it's like, I'm like been telling Nikki, I'm like, I'm excited to go Cabo, right? Like, I'm excited to go golf. I'm excited for somewhere that's close. I'm excited to go skimboarding or surfing because they got good waves. Like, I'm just like excited about it. Then it's like when you're there, you're obviously excited about it. Then when you're remembering it and reflecting back on it, you're excited about it. And then when you get to tell the story later in life, because like some of the best stories that like, it's funny when you get older. I mean, like, I'll put it this way. Blah, blah, blah. When I think about like with my group of friends, a lot of times we're talking about like all these fun stories and these crazy nights and these crazy weekends or trips. And it's like, it now feels like in my mid 30s with like now my friends, like we're not partying anymore to anywhere to that degree. Most of them have kids and a full-time career. So it tends to be like this reflection, right? It's backwards. And I'm always like, me and my buddy Mike here, probably the most similar to this. He's like, what? Let's keep making news stories, right? Let's keep doing stuff, right? And it's like, that's this lifestyle maxing. Like, you want to really do as much as you can while you can, right? And like the whole saying no and like, I'll do it tomorrow or pushing it off next weekend or being lazy. It's like, and it's hard because like I can have my concept of living. I'm not here to tell anybody how they should live. I'm just telling you like what I feel gets me excited and works well for me and like how I'm happy. But that was one thing that I think was always kind of a cool way to look at it is like the social dividend that's paid off, right? Delayed gratification can become a delayed living, right? So saving everything for someday often means missing life entirely, right? So this is for me, like, we talk about this a lot with like business and success. And, I talk about this with clients when it comes to food or exercise. Like, there needs to be this delayed gratification, right? Like, in order for you to become successful. But there also needs to be this balancing act that like, I don't want to delay the gratification forever or so long that I miss the opportunity of being grateful for what it actually is. Or, enjoying the fruits of your labor basically. Right. So I think about this like with, if I were to give you guys like an exercise one, it's like, yeah, it's like, okay, when you start to see a little bit of momentum, that doesn't mean you go back to your previous lifestyle. Right. It's like, oh, I've been really, really good with dieting. So now I can go back to eating at a restaurant. It's like, no, like we get to balance that out because like, the way I look at it from a nutrition standpoint or a health standpoint is kind of the way I look at it this from a financial standpoint is like you can afford to have more flexibility in your diet if you're more active. You can afford to go on vacation or spend more money or take more time off if you make a lot of money, right? So it's like prioritizing the front end of what you're doing currently or before allows you to have a better future or current status thing. So it's like, that's where there's like this balancing act, I think, all this stuff, right? Number 6, the goal is not to save the maximum, it's to spend optimally across your lifespan, right? And that's where I think if you guys were to really, and no one I think does this a lot of us sometimes will plan like current things that we want to work on or maybe an annual goal, but like how many times do you actually sit down and think about, okay, what do I want to do in my 20s? Or what do I want to do in my 30s? Or what do I want to do in my 40s? What do I want to do in my 50s? What's a big macro goal, right? And when you can learn to kind of think about like optimally, like what is the reality of me doing some of these things now versus later in life, right? Like maybe I'm not going to go on these crazy vacations or these long hikes or these long physically demanding things now because I have kids, it's going to be harder to do it. And it's like, I'll just wait until like the kids are at the house. And it's like, then you're in your 60s and you're like, well, that stuff sounds maybe less exciting or way more physically demanding than it was 30 years ago or 20 years ago. So that's where it's like, when you think about this spending optimally, it's like, think about where you are in your current status of life, right? And I think about this like in the 20s when it's like, so when I talk about some of this retirement planning stuff now in my 30s or just like long-term stuff, I think as you get older, it's naturally something that we think about more. But it's like, honestly, I would have never changed anything about my 20s. I was like, pretty much a degenerate. I was always good at saving some degree, but nowhere near the like capacity that I have now, just because I think my needs have dropped already. But like in my 20s, it's like I was always going out. I was like, it doesn't matter if it was a bar, if it was bottle service, it was restaurants, it was a vacation, it was a weekend trip with the boys. Like I was just like, screw it. Like, let's just have fun. Let's go for it. And now in the 30s, it's like, hey, without even saying that I want to change that, it happened already. Because it's like my friends or my people around me are not doing that as much because that's just like the natural evolution. So when you think about this, like spend optimally, it's like spend in the right areas, right? Like right now, like for me, it's always like maximizing my work and maximizing my health and maximizing the time that I have with like my wife and my friends and like kids in the future and things like that. Again, number 7, the one, peak earning years are not your peak living years, right? So this is always another way to think about this is like, we were talking about this with 401k. It's like, 401k is basically pulling out money now pre-tax. But when you have to pull it out later in life when you're 65, if you're pulling it out early, you're getting penalized. But like you pull it out early. The cool thing about 401k is like, yes, it's money you're putting away, but it's compounding, right? So it's like, it's making money in the markets, but you're not able to touch it for most of us, 20, 30, 40 years, depending on how old you are. But you're then going to pay taxes on it when you pull out later. And the question I asked the team is like, do you guys think you'll be paying more taxes 20, 30 years from now versus now? And everyone said yes. We can't say that with for sure certainty, but we can imagine it's like, oh, like, well, so far in our lifetime, like taxes have just kept going up. So it's like between the Roth or traditional different styles of living. But when you think about your peak earning years, why do you think that you're going to make less money the older you get? Right? So it's like when I think about like how much I'm saving or how much I'm allocating towards, it's like I also been like, well, what I was making 10 years ago is not what I'm making now. I'm making more money now. And I'm hoping, and that's the plan for all of us, that we're going to make more money in 10 years from now and a lot more money in 20 years from now. So like as long as we keep investing into ourselves and into our work and into our investments, we can keep growing where we don't have to put everything away for savings and not enjoy that current life, right? So that's also another thing is like think about your peak living years. Like for me, is now. Like I want to maximize the living experiences, right? Even if it requires me putting a little bit less away now, I'd rather maximize during the time that I can. And like I'm just going to fall back on the assumption that I'm also going to be making more money as I get older. So that was kind of one of the things he said there. 8, die with 0 or as close to it means extracting the full value from your money in your life. I think about this with legacy or leaving money behind for kids. I don't think about this a lot because I'm obviously only 34 years old, and I can imagine someone that's in their 40s, 50s, or 60s, or 70s is probably just thinks about it more and more and more the closer we get to that number, as far as, unfortunately, death and leaving this planet. But I don't know. It's interesting because like there's a part of me that's like, okay, I do want to like be able to build something so I can leave something for somebody else, right? It doesn't matter if it's a business or something that I've grown and like something my dad and my mom talked about briefly, and like I honestly like I wish we kind of talked about it more as kids, and like that's something like I reflect back as far as like parenting is like I wish that I was like able to help grow my parents' thing a little bit more. Like like my dad worked at PG&E, but like invested in real estate. Both my parents kind of just built up a little bit of a portfolio for themselves. And like when I say a little bit, they had like 20 something homes. And then they started selling them off as they got older and selling them off, selling them off, selling them off. And they have a few left now. But I'm always like, there's a part of me that's like, yeah, I wish they like kept that stuff and allowed us to like keep building on that portfolio or keep building on that dynasty as a family. But my dad was pretty old school of like keeping things separately. He was always like, my work, my things, my money is mine, right? It's me and your mom's. And you guys are going to have your thing, right? And like, I'm going to teach you the principles and morals and values of life, but like, go do your own. So my parents were, and I am very grateful for that because like I didn't rely on anything from them for anything, but it allowed me to build what I needed to build based off what I was learning. But I think about this die with 0 number. It's like, okay, like I don't want to just be like, okay, now I'm 90 years old and I have all this freaking money. It's like for me, I would like if I got to that life, I would think I would have maybe some level of regret a little bit of being like, I didn't spend enough when I was younger. I didn't maximize more. I should have went on more vacations. I should have went on more trips. I should have spent, like, and not that you have to just because you got it. But I think like, don't ever go backwards thinking as far as like, oh, is this a regret that I have that I didn't maximize the time and the money that I had during that time to be able to do so. Number 9, invest in experiences that shape who you become. I mean, like at the end of the day, I think like we've touched on this multiple times already. It's like the vacations, the experiences, the time with people, like going out, having fun, even if you got to go pay for other people. I think about that with my brother sometimes. It's like my mom's like, why do you pay for Jesse's stuff so much? And I'm like, well, I don't pay for a lot of things, but like if I can, why would I not? Like if I can help in certain areas, if I can pay for friends. I remember when I was younger, it was like we would go out and we'd like, I don't know why the hell we did this so much, but like go get bottle service, go get a table somewhere, and like someone would be like, like I don't really want to go out. I'm like, you know what? I'll pay for you. Let's just come out. Like for me, it was more important just having people out, even if I had to pay for you. And I'm like, oh fuck it, like I'll stretch myself a little bit because like the experience was the thing that like is like it's priceless. Like I would have paid more for it now looking back in my 20s. It's like I would have rather run myself to 0 and start back over when I opened up the business. Like who cares? Like the experience of what I was pulling out and extracting from life was the thing that is the most valuable thing because that shaped who I am. Like, and those experiences shape who you are. So it's like invest in those things and spend that money and spend that time doing those things. Number 10, a life well lived is the ultimate return on your investment. So that's the last one that I wrote down. I mean, those are like 10 things that I had that were like, okay, what popped out in the book for me? But, I'm trying to connect this a little bit to finances, but really, I think it's really a connection to just like lifestyle maxing, right? I know maxing is like the new trendy word. Lifestyle maxing is basically like doing your best to extract as much out of you can out of the current life, right? Like instead of always trying to have a safe haven or fallback solely on if I can just put all my things away for tomorrow, that I'll be good when that happens versus like how much do you need to maximize today and then put the rest away for tomorrow, right? And I think like for certain people, there's context. Certain people maybe need to invest first before they spend, because some people, and like this is the sad reality of life. I think saying these things, or even like this guy writing this book, like I think it's easier for someone like that to write a book that has made the money, right? Versus someone that's like maybe they're not as financially responsible, right? Maybe they are stressed out with their finances. Maybe they are like over leveraged and have too much debt and they're negative as far as equity goes. So like, I think there's context to like your style of personality. Like if it's something, and that's where when I look back at like some of the reflections from just like what I was doing with the team last week, it's like for me, I would always say, why not try to maximize getting as much out of your work? So instead of trying to work, like I have some people on the team that are working 30 hours a week that are trying to save really extreme. And it's like, well, why not work 40 hours a week or 45 hours a week when you have the energy, make more money, and maybe just put the difference away if you needed to, right? Like I think a lot of times like we're not maximizing the output of what we could be doing on production, and we're trying to maximize what we're putting away. And it's like, do both, right? Like you try to make as much money as possible by investing into yourself, right? And I think like when you think about these investments back into yourself, I think about this with like, okay, like is it real estate? Is it stocks and bonds in the markets, right? Is it different equities? Is it, is it crypto? Like what are we saving for, right? Or what are the tools or the vehicles that we're using to save? But I think like the best savings account that I have and the best retirement plan I have is myself. Like skills pay the bills. You have to learn to earn. Like, so I think like the more that we can invest back into ourselves, and that's where I think like, like yesterday, for example, I literally spent $5,000 on a scaling workshop, like a business workshop. So I'm flying out to Vegas in, mid-March, 2-day events, 10 hours a day each. And it's like, for me, it's like that money, like 10 years ago, I'd be like, whoa, no, I'm not spending that much money. But like every year it's gotten easier for me to just continually keep spending money on myself, because I've never once regretted investing in myself. I never once have regretted spending money on learning more, because those are like, that is my life insurance policy. Like that is the thing that gives me confidence to continually grow. And like, guess what? That skill allowed me to make more, to then be able to save more, invest more, be able to put those things away. So I think like this I think about this with nutrition a lot. Like I kind of relate like the health and wealth kind of dynamic a lot of like, calories in, calories out, but it's also like money in, money out, right? And it's like, we need money to give us freedom, right? And that's just one of these things about living in this capitalistic world in the west side of the planet, of like, that's just like how our unfortunate like society is ran. And I say unfortunate or fortunate, depending on how you look at it. I think like free enterprise is something I personally believe in, but I think it's something that can be viewed as a negative thing if you're not utilizing it, right? But lifestyle maxing doesn't require you to have a shit ton of money. There's plenty of things that we can be doing that are free, right? There's plenty of things that we can be doing that are not necessarily super financially demanding. Now, that being said, there are still plenty of things that are. I'm not saying materials make you happy, but like investing in the experiences, investing in the education, investing in your people, spending that money back, right? I think like for me, that last week's episode was a big one for me, because I really just like this like kind of spiritual point of view of like that living is the idea of service to others. There is nothing more fulfilling in life than helping other people, right? And I want to think about that with this lifestyle maxing term of dying with zero, is like nothing's more fulfilling than doing things with people you love, even if it costs you a little bit more money, even if it costs you a little bit of energy of staying on a little bit later, even if it like, my habit of I just want to be comfortable and I just want to stay home. Like, I think you need to like make sure that we're prioritizing that. So kind of tie all that stuff in. It's like, yes, at the end of the day, invest in yourself so you can maximize income. But then, take as much of that chunk that based off your personality or your needs in life and invest now. Like do things that make you happy, not things that are going to be temporary. Like this is where I think materials for a lot of people of clothing or cars or things like that can be a little bit of egotistical purchases. But vacations, experiences, doing things that really kind of maximize what you currently are doing, because you got to remember there's going to be periods of your life where you're going to be able to do it physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever. There's going to be periods of your life where you're not going to be able to do so. So don't save all your eggs for a time that you might not even be able to use it, right? So those resources, I think like when you think about that allocation over a course of a lifetime, I think it allows you to kind of maybe shift your mindset a little bit in the perspective of like, how am I going to allocate the time and the resources, the money that I have over the course, so I can damn near die with zero. That's it. So hope you guys like that one. Hope you guys got some nuggets, and I'll see you guys next week.